Lesson 9, Grading and Reporting of Test Results. First things first, let me introduce to you the learning outcomes of this lesson. Assess and communicate learners' level of achievement and performance through fair, accurate, and meaningful grading and reporting methods. Grades are typically referred to the mark or scores given to students in an academic assessment. It also reflects their performance in a particular course or subject. The purpose of grade is to serve as the way to assess and communicate a student's understanding of a subject. They provide feedback on academic performance and help measure its progress. There are different methods of scoring a test or performance test. First is the number right scoring, or NR, or NR, or assigning positive values only to correct answers while giving a score of 0 to incorrect answers. So meaning to say, number right scoring, you will only be giving 8 points to those answer who is correct. Then if the answer of the students were incorrect, then the teacher will not give any points to that answer. The second one is negative marking, or NM, or assigning positive values to correct answers while punishing the learners for incorrect answers. The second one is the negative marking, or NM, assigning positive values to correct answers while punishing the learners for incorrect responses. So meaning to say, if the students got their answer correct, then they will have points. And if they answer it incorrectly, then they will be deducted points. Or there are consequences. Here are the non-conventional scoring methods, the partial credit scoring methods. This method of scoring takes into account the partial knowledge mastery of learners. There are three formats of partial credit scoring. First, the liberal multiple choice test. It allows the learners to select one or more answer to a question. The second is the elimination test. It instructs learners to cross out all the alternative answers they consider to be incorrect. The third format is the confidence weighing, or CW. It asks learners to indicate what they believe is the correct answer and how they are confident that they are about their choice. Next is multiple answer scoring method. It allows learner to have multiple answers for each item. In this method, learners are instructed that each item has at least one or how many correct answers. Next, the retrospective correcting for guessing. It considers omitted or no answer question as incorrect. So the teacher will not give any points if the students have omitted answers. Forcing learners to have an answer for every item. Next is the standard setting. It entails using standard when scoring multiple choice item. Particularly standard set through norm reference or criterion reference assessment. There are four types of scoring. First is the holistic scoring. It involves a single or overall assessment score. For example, in an essay or reflection. It scores the overall context of the essay or the reflection. The second type is the analytic scoring. The second type of scoring is the analytic scoring. It involves assessing each aspect of performance task and assigning a score for each criterion, such as organization, ideas, structure, and so on. The third is the primary trait scoring. It focuses only on one criterion of a task, and a learner's performance is evaluated in only one trait. It is typically involves assessing and assigning scores to fundamental characteristics or qualities that define a person's behavior, personality, or skills. Fourth type of scoring method is the multiple trait scoring. Unlike primary trait scoring, This method requires that an essay test or performance task is scored on more than one aspect, with scoring criteria. It is similar to analytic scoring because it focuses on several categories or criteria. Instead of focusing on just one trait, it considers several aspects to provide a more comprehensive understanding of a person's behavior, skills, and etc. Different types of test scores. First is the raw score. The raw score, it is simply the number of items answered correctly on a test. It is basically the actual score of the students in a test or assessment. However, a raw score has no meaning unless you know what the test is measuring. It is the unprocessed or direct count of correct answers. Second, the percentage score. It is a numerical or representation of proportion, usually expressed as a percentage out of 100. It offers a straightforward way to understand and communicate success. The third is the criterion reference grading. Based on a fixed criterion measure, there is a fixed target and the students must achieve that target in order to obtain a passing grade. For example, pass or fail grade. It allows learners to receive either a pass or a fail grade. Next is the letter grade. This is one of the most commonly used grading systems. It is usually composed of 5 levels of grading scale: A, B, C, D, and E. A stands for excellent, while B stands for good, C stands for satisfaction, D stands for poor, and then E stands for unacceptable.
Plus and minus letter grade. So this grading provides a more detailed descriptions of the level of learners' achievement or task test performance by dividing each category into 3 levels such as A plus, A and A minus, B as B plus, and B minus, and so on. Okay, so in this type of grading, this is where they use from the description itself, it the letter grade. So they use letters as a way of grading. So for example, A plus refers to excellent. A refers to superior, while A minus is refers to very. Okay, so categorical grade. This system of grading is generally more descriptive than letter grades, especially if coupled with verbal labels. Verbal labels eliminate the need for a key legend to explain what each grade category means. Okay, so when we say categorical grades, if we compare it to the letter grades, the letter grades has letters, it has legends, while it doesn't really, it's not straight to the point if graded, because if you grade it, you still need to look for the legend, or you still have to know what A plus means, what B plus means. But in here, in the categorical grades, it's straight to the point. It's very detailed, it's very descriptive. You don't need anything else because it's already there. Number 4, norm reference grading system. In this method of grading, learners' test scores are compared with those of their peers. Norm reference grading involves rank, ordering learners, and expressing a learner's score in relation to achievement of the rest of the group. Norm reference grading allows teachers to, number 1, compare learners' test performance with that of other learners. Number 2, compare learners' performance in the form of test or subtest with other tests. And 3, compare learners' performance with the form of test with another form of test administered at an earlier date. Just to go straight to the point, norm reference grading system is a method where the teacher would compare the students' scores or the students' performance to their classmates or their peers. Okay, so number 4.1. developmental score. This is the score that has been transformed from raw score and reflect the average performance at age and grade levels. There are two kinds of developmental scores. Number one is grade equivalent score, described as both growth score and a status score. Number two is age equivalent score, indicates that age level is typical to a learners to obtain such raw score. Developmental scores are the basis for constructing growth models, which shows how students at all achievement levels increase in knowledge as they progress through the educational system. 4.2 Percentile ranks. This indicates the percentage of scores that fall at or below a given score. Percentile rank range from 1 to 99. For example, if a learner obtained a score of 75th percentile rank in standardized achievement test, it means that the learner was able to get a higher score than 75% of the learner in the norm group. Okay, so in the percentile score, a student's percentile rank indicates that the student scored as well as or better than the percent of students in the norm group. 4.3 Stanine score. This system expresses test results in 9 equal steps, which range from 1, the lowest, and to the 9, which is the highest. The Stanine score of 5 is interpreted as average Stanine. Stanine scores, or short for Standard 9, are standardized 1 to 9 scores that is commonly used in psychometric testing. So, the Stanine scores are most commonly used by psychometricians to allow them to convert rather abstract standardized scores into more interpretable numbers for a lay audience. As with other standardized scores, they are based on the average distribution of scores for a specific population. Okay, so 4.4 standard score. They are raw scores that are converted into a common scale of measurement that provides meaningful descriptions of the individual scores within the distribution. So the two commonly used standard score or X score. One of a standard score have a mean and standard deviation of 1. So the standard score are useful when you want to compare learners' test performance across two class distributions. So for example, standard deviation. So the standard deviation of class A is 1 and the standard deviation of class B is 5. So the mean score of class A is 85 while the mean score of class B is 90. So the score of student 1 90. So Lewis scored 90 while Michael scored 9. Okay. So while the difference between raw scores of Lewis and Michael from the mean is the same. So Michael's standard score is lower than Lewis's standard score. So this is because the variability in scores in Michael's class is higher than that in Lewis's class. As such, it is appropriate to convert raw scores to standard scores when comparison is warranted, because raw scores things in different situations or for different learners. So, a z-score can either be positive or negative. So, the positive and negative signs do not indicate the magnitude of z-scores. Rather, they indicate the directions of scores from the mean. So, a positive z-score means that the raw score is higher than the group mean, while negative z-score indicates that the raw score is lower than the group mean. So t-score is another type of standard score, wherein the mean is equal to 50 and the standard deviation is equal to 10. It is linear transformation of z-score, which have mean, zero, and standard deviation. It is computed from z-score, and the following formula is t equals to 50 plus 10z. So a score of 50 is considered as average, with t-scores ranging from 40 to 60 as within the normal range. So t-score of 30 and below and t-scores of 70 and above are interpreted as low and high test performance respectively. The following figures represents the relationships among the various standard scores and percentiles in a normal distribution. So as from what you have seen in the picture, this the figure is the relationships among various standard scores and percentile rank in a normal distribution. So it is commonly known as the bell-shaped curve. So what are the general guidelines in grading test or performance task? Utmost care should be observed to ensure that grading practices are equitable, fair, and meaningful to the learners and other stakeholders. It is therefore important when constructing a test or performance task, the methods and criteria for grading learners' responses or answers should be set and specified. In doing so, it is essential to consider the purpose of the assessment, the ability of the entire group being tested, and the nature of tasks to be performed. The following are general guidelines in grading test or performance task. Okay, so number 1, stick to the purpose of the assessment. Before coming up with an assessment, it is first important to determine the purpose of the test. Okay, so when you conduct a performance-based assessment, you have to think about the purpose of it. Okay, so does this help the students understand that type of lesson, or does this help them value the lesson? Case number 2, be guided with the desired learning outcomes. The learners should be informed early on what they are expected of them, insofar as learning outcomes are concerned, as well as how they will be assessed and graded in the test. Okay, so in this type, so in number 2, you should stick to the objectives because that is how you will grade them. Okay, so number 3, grading criteria. Grading criteria to be used in traditional tests and performance tests should be made clear to the students. Okay, when you are conducting a performance-based task, the students should know on how they will be graded because so that when they read the criteria, they would know what to do in that certain performance. Because if the children or if the students doesn't really know the criteria, then they don't know how they will be graded in that particular performance, which will only cause confusions amongst the students. Okay, so in number 4, inform learners what scoring methods are to be used. Learners should be aware before the start of testing whether their test responses are scored based on number, right, negative marking, or through non-conventional scoring methods. So, as you all know, there are types of different scoring methods. So, the students needs to be aware on what scoring methods are to be used. Case number 5, decide on what type of test scores to use. So as discussed earlier, there are different ways by which students' learning can be measured and presented. So what are the general guidelines in grading essay tests? So essays require more time to grade than any other types of traditional tests. Solely because there are times where the raters would read through the whole essay which there are types of essays where the essays tends to be longer. So, grading essay tests can also be influenced by extraneous factors, such as learners' handwriting legibility. Okay, so there are times, so it cannot be avoided that the learners has diverse and various, and they also have various types of handwriting in which where the teachers can either understand or doesn't understand the learner's handwriting and readers' biases. So it is therefore important that you devise essay question prompts and grading scheme procedures that will minimize the threats to validity and reliability. So scoring essays can be more rigorous by developing a scoring scheme. The following are the general guidelines in scoring essay test.